So now that we have Python installed, there are a couple of different ways for us to create and run our Python code. We have the interactive mode, which lets us quickly write and execute Python instructions. You can write just one line and press enter to have it executed right away. Or we can also save our Python code into a file and then run it as a script using the Python interpreter. We will start with a demonstration of using the Python interpreter in interactive mode. One way of accessing this interpreter is through a command line interface. A command line interface, or CLI for short, is a text-based program that allows the user to execute instructions on the computer by typing commands in plain text. In the earlier days of personal computers, this used to be the only way that users could interact with their machines. But nowadays, most people will interact with their devices using a graphical user interface instead. But as a programmer, you will definitely be using the command line quite often, so it would be good to introduce this topic to you as early as now. To launch a command line interface here on Windows, you can use the program called Command Prompt. We can look for it here in the search field by typing CMD. And then here it is. Click on it to launch a command line interface window. And here we see a very plain looking window with some text. You'll see some information about your Windows version here at the top. And this right here is called a prompt. By default, it will show your current working directory. In other words, the folder that you are currently working in here in the command line interface. For me right now, I am inside the administrator folder under users. Yours might say something else since you are on a different machine. And then right beside a prompt is where you would type a command to be executed. To access the Python interpreter from here, type Python and press enter. Now, for some of you on Windows 10, you might encounter a problem where you get sent to the Microsoft Store instead. If you encounter that problem, you can find the solution in the video description below. Okay, so if you fix a problem or it never came up in the first place, you should now see the Python interpreter. We have some version information here, as well as some instructions on how you can get more help and information. Now, the reason we were able to access the interpreter by typing the Python command is because during the Python installation earlier, we checked the Add Python to Path checkbox. This path is a list of directories that the command line interface will look through to find executable programs such as the Python interpreter. So if we did not add Python to the path, then the command line interface would not be able to find it, and we would get an error message instead. Okay, so what you see now is the Python interpreter in interactive mode. Interactive mode allows us to type instructions in Python and have them immediately executed. This set of three angle brackets that you see here is referred to as the primary prompt of the Python interpreter. So you would type an instruction next to it. For example, we can type 3 + 5, and then when we press enter, we see the result immediately. And then the primary prompt appears again so that we can type our next instruction. So every time you type some valid Python code, pressing enter will cause the Python interpreter to execute that code, and if there is a result to be displayed, then we'll see it immediately. The Python interpreter's interactive mode is a quick way to test out some Python commands or to quickly make some calculations because it allows us to see the results right away. In future lessons, we will of course be writing more interesting code. But for now, we will end this basic demonstration of the Python interpreter in interactive mode. To exit the interpreter on Windows, you can press Ctrl Z on your keyboard, or you can also type quit followed by parentheses, or exit followed by parentheses will work as well. So now we have left the Python interpreter and we are back here in the command line interface prompt. The limitation of the interactive mode is that it's really just for testing, experimenting, and trying out small snippets of code. It does not offer you a way to save your program to a file. So anything that you do in interactive mode will be lost once you exit. So this is really not the main tool that you will be using when you start building your computer programs. Instead, you will need a code editor so that you can write your Python code and save it to a file, and then use the Python interpreter to run the code from that file. And that's what we will do in the next video.